All right, Dirt Dauber friends, it's been a while since I did a video, and I realized it's easier to work on these things and just enjoy them than it is to make videos. But I also know that there are things that I'm having to figure out by my own, or having to do research on I Hate Mud and places like that to find things out, because there's not a lot of videos on YouTube on how to work on these FJ40s. So I thought what I would do is every time I do a little project, like today I'm rotating the tires, inspecting the brakes, those type things. I thought what I'd do is make a little short video and post it that way for you guys that are new to working on FJ40s or need a little help figuring out how to do that kind of stuff. Maybe these videos will help. So I'm gonna explain everything, and I know for a lot of guys, things like how to jack up a car, how to take off a tire, some of those things you may already know, but I also know that there are guys that get these. I'm in a Land Cruiser club, and we've got a few guys that are brand new to working on these things and may not even know some of the basics. And so feel free to fast forward or skip over parts that you are familiar with, but there may be a trick or a tip in here that would help you. So what I'm doing basically is rotating these tires, and I've got the original Steelies with the little hubcaps, and Rusty here has got some rust in the quarter panels and a couple places like that that have to be replaced. But what Rusty does have is some shiny new sandblasted and powder coated original Steely wheels. These are the ones that came on it, and they were white when I bought this. I'm not sure why. Maybe they came white from the factory, or maybe somebody painted them white at some point, but I liked the gray. I call it like battleship gray. And so I took it and took them off, took it to Discount Auto, had them take the tires off. I took the rims, had them sandblasted and powder coated. It took about 2-3 days. Then I went back to Discount Tire and actually did not buy the tires at Discount Tire. My Discount Tire will install tires even if they're not the ones you bought from them. They could not get these tires. These are Kendas, and I bought these. These are Kenda cleavers, and they are 33 by 9.5 15s. And I like the skinny tall look, not the wide fat look, although that looks good too on some 40s, but I decided to go with this for a couple reasons. One is this does not have a lift, and so I was afraid if I got too wide of a tire, the tire would rub here. And so I probably would have, if I had known I could fit it, I probably would have got 33 1050s just to get a little bit wider tire. I think a little bit wider tire looks better than the 9.5s, the 950s. But anyways, these are great. I've had them on for about probably 5,000 miles. I drive around town, I've driven them on the highway, I've driven them off-road, and they do great. And the price is right. I got 5 tires because I also did the spare. 5 brand new tires shipped to my door. I think they showed up like the next day or the day after, 2 days. And 5 tires, 33 950s. I think total price was like $900. So that's hard to beat. And then I just had to pay, I think it was like $150 or something for the lifetime rotate and balance it at a Discount Tire. The reason I'm rotating them today is 2 reasons, really 3. One is too lazy to make an appointment to take it up there. The second reason is I don't want them scratching up my tires, and so I wanted to do it once myself to see how hard it is to get the hubcaps off. Scratching up the rims is what I mean. And then also I needed to inspect the brakes, and so I figured I'll just go ahead and rotate them myself this time. I enjoy doing this kind of stuff, and next time I'll probably take it up there and let them do it. So that's what I'm doing today. Gonna take off these rims, rotate them, and I'm going clockwise. I don't know, I didn't even look online to see if there's like a recommended way to do it. I just decided it'd be easy to remember clockwise. So I'm taking the spare off the back, which I've already done. I had the spare right here on the back. I took it off and put it here on the driver's side rear, and then I got the one that was on here before, the driver's side rear, up here, ready to put on. I'm just going to rotate them clockwise, and then that way I can remember as I go. Every time I do it, just clockwise. And these tires should last a really long time One, because I'm not putting a ton of miles on this thing, although I am driving it basically every day. It's my everyday driver right now. But I just don't put a ton of miles. My commute is like 3 miles to my job, and I don't go into the office every day. And I have 5 tires that I'm rotating. So I think these tires will probably last a long time. And so today I'm going to walk through this process, show you what I do, and then hopefully it'll be helpful to you as well. I'm going to also check, I think this one over here is, you can tell it's leaking some of the grease. And so I think maybe the knuckle might need a little grease in there. And so I'm going to see if I can also add a little, check that, and hopefully show you how to do it. I totally rebuilt the whole front axle on Bell, my blue one. And so I've gone through, I replaced bearings and everything. And I'm going to do that to Rusty here too, probably when I change the brakes. I've already got rotors and pads, but I'll probably go ahead and buy the front end rebuild kit and replace all the seals, all the bearings, all the chases, everything. It's kind of worth doing. You really need to replace the seals more than the bearings, but I don't know that the bearings have ever been done on this. And so since it's new to me, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Then I'll know that's done, and replace the seals and everything, so I know the whole front axle will be brand new when I finish, and would probably never have to do bearings again. May have to do seals if I keep this thing another 10, 15 years. But what I'll do is I'll make really good notes for the next owner. Also, they'll have these videos to look at, and so he'll know, or she'll know, whoever buys this thing, if and when I ever sell it, they'll know when the bearings have been done. And then if they get into it like I am here, and next time they could just replace the seals, which is notorious on these things for leaking. So anyways, let's get into it. All right, your wheels and hubcaps might be old and all scratched up, and so you don't really care about scratching them up. But since mine are new, this one's dirty, I'll clean it. But since these hubcaps are brand new, and I just had these wheels powder coated a year ago, 6 months ago, I don't really want to scratch them up. So what I do is I take a big screwdriver like this, I stick a rag on it, poke it in here, and then I put my hand down here to kind of catch it, because if it does fall off, I don't want it to hit the concrete and bang all up. So just kind of pop it, and it'll come out, and then you can pull it off. All right, newer cars that have a unibody have you jack them up on the body. Older cars that have a frame and an axle, especially a solid front axle, the best place to jack it up is under the axle. But you don't want to just jack it up anywhere. If you're jacking up the driver's side, what you want to do is come down here, and right where the spring perch and the U-bolts and all that connect, that's a great place to jack it up, because it's, you know, plenty of metal there to support the vehicle. So what I do is I take my jack, and I always have a piece of 2x4 or 2x6, and what it does is it just provides a softer pad. Basically, you can see all these spots where the U-bolts have touched it before. So I just put that on my jack. I'm gonna roll this right underneath the spring perch, jack it up. But before you do that, you wanna loosen the lug nuts, because once you jack this tire up, that front's gonna spin, and it's gonna be harder to loosen those lug nuts. So I'm gonna loosen the lug nuts first, and then jack it up, take the lug nuts off, swap the tire out. Something else that's important to mention is some safety pointers. There's things like, you know, gloves, some safety glasses, things like that would be important to wear. And I'm pretty good about wearing those things, especially when I do like a grinder or something like that. But for changing a tire, you'd probably be okay not wearing gloves and not wearing glasses. But there have been times I've just taken off a tire, a piece of dirt will fly up or something, hit me in the eye. So it's not a bad idea. One thing I definitely recommend is a wheel chock. As you're lifting this vehicle up, especially you lift up the rear end. On mine, you know, I've got the brake. This is a 78, so it's got the brake drum that's on the drive shaft, and I keep it in gear as well just to help make sure it stays in place. But when you jack up the rear end, you no longer have those rear tires as a brake, and so it's always good to put a chock. I put this under the front tires when I'm working on the back, and then I put it under the back tires here when I'm working on the front, just as a safety precaution. And especially in my little shop here, you probably can't tell, but there is a slight slope, and so if this thing's not in gear or don't put the brake on, it will definitely roll away and roll down my driveway and roll into my neighbor's house. And so I'd be really upset if I did that, not so much because I messed up my neighbor's house, but more because I wrecked my car. So little safety tip there. That's what I was talking about. The tire will spin if these lug nuts aren't loose. This one's a little tight, and that tire will spin on you. So you definitely want to break them loose while you got it on the ground. Now, a couple of these lug nuts are hanging, and I've inspected them. Couple on the back did that, and it's really the lug nuts. It's not the lug in there. And the good thing is you can buy these lug nuts. You can buy them from Toyota still, and they're pretty cheap. They're a couple bucks a piece. I'm gonna go ahead and replace most of these for that very reason, because replacing a lug nut is super easy. Getting in here and replacing the lug is a lot harder. When I do the video on rebuilding this front end, I'll show you how to change out a lug if you end up having to do that. There are some videos on YouTube that show you how to do that on other vehicles. It's going to be pretty similar on this, but you do have to take this locking hub assembly off to get to the back of the rotor, and so it's a pretty big deal. All right, so to check the grease inside your hub, you'll see there is a bolt right in here on top of the knuckle. And I sprayed a little penetrating grease on mine because I wasn't sure if it was gonna be tight or not. It actually came out pretty easy, but you can get just a crescent wrench in here from the side, come up on it, and then just loosen it. We're gonna pull that bolt out, and then I'm going to stick my finger down in there if it can fit, if not probably a screwdriver, and see if I get any grease. These knuckles are supposed to be about 3/4 of the way full with grease, and you know, but it leaks out over time. You can see you know, the grease here that's come out all here, so I'm sure it's a little bit low, but if there's any in there, I'm probably gonna just not add any, because I'm going to rebuild these, like I said, before too long. One other thing you can do while you're in here is inspect your ball joints, your steering joints. Right here, that's not a ball joint. It is a ball joint, but it's a steering joint, tie rod end, and you can see this one's pretty bad shape. It's wore out, grease coming out everywhere, but also just how loose it is. If you can turn it like that, you know, and it'll turn an inch. It's pretty wore out. So I'll replace those. When I rebuild this front end, I'll replace all these tie rod ends as well. One thing I figured out as I was doing this is that bolt is a 13, so you don't have to use a crescent wrench. You can get a 13, which will actually be easier to get up in there. I pulled it out, and up at the very top is, let's see if I can get a picture of it, is grease. And so I'm gonna stick a screwdriver down in there and see, but I think it's got a good bit of grease in there. Okay, so I stuck a screwdriver down in there, pulled it out, and as you can see, there's grease all over the screwdriver. And the grease actually looks really good. It's not dirty. It looks fairly clean, so I'm wondering if maybe this front end has been rebuilt at some point. The odometer inside the car says 56,000, which I'm guessing 156,000, maybe even 250, but probably, if I had to guess by the rest of the shape of the vehicle, I would guess probably 150. And so I'm not going to add any. Seems like there's plenty in there, and I probably will rebuild this thing this summer, so I'll get in there and get a really good look at everything. It's not giving me any problems, so outside of the normal little bit of leakiness, the front end's actually working pretty good, so I may not do anything. I did notice also my other tie rod end here from the steering link is in pretty bad shape, so those will definitely need to be replaced sooner than later. And the pads, you can inspect the pads and you can see mine do not have a ton left on them. Probably about, I don't know, maybe I don't know, that's more than a 16th. I don't know, they need to be done soon, so I am gonna jump on that at least this spring, and at least replace, I have brand new rotors and pads and I'll replace all that this summer. But the Knuckle looks good as far as grease. If I was going to add grease, you can do some research online. I researched and checked on I Hate Mud, and this Valvoline synthetic Durblend is what I found and was recommended. Excuse me. And so that's what I would put in it. That's what I rebuilt my other one with. So if you need something like that, a good suspension, it'll say brake wheel drum grease, that's what you want to fill it in. Again, these are only supposed to be filled up about 2/3 or 3/4. They're not supposed to be packed super solid with all that grease. And so if you can see grease like I did, if you can put a screwdriver down in there and hit grease, you're probably good. The other thing that would be an indicator is if you had a ton, like sometimes these things back here are just super thick, just grease coming out everywhere, and you can tell just by looking at it that it's lost a lot of grease. And so if that were the case, then I'd replace or add some grease, but I'm not going to. I'm going to put this cap back on, put the tire that was on the rear up here, and then move over to the passenger side and do the same thing. Okay, just like I thought, my passenger side knuckle is leaking. You can see all the grease down here, all the grease around this side. So although the driver's side looks pretty good, the passenger side not so good. And you can see, look at the back of this tire, it's got grease all on it. None of the other tires obviously have that. So got this side is leaking and will need to be replaced, which probably means also it wouldn't be a bad idea to put a little grease in this one if it's leaking that bad. So I'll do the same thing on this side, inspection, and if it needs a little grease, I'll put some in it. Here are the steering link tie rod ends. Again, you know, they're pretty easy to move. I mean, they're not dangerously bad, but they're pretty bad. So I can replace these at some point in the future, and I'll do a video on that when the time comes. But if you can grab yours and shake it and it like knocks, then that's dangerous. These are movable by hand, but they're pretty tight still, and it steers pretty good. So not something urgent, but you can buy a kit. I think the whole kit to replace. There's 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4 or 5 of them. The whole kit is less than $200 on a place like Cruiser Outfitters or Cool Cruisers or something like that. You can do Rock Auto, but I think you probably get a little better quality part with a Cruiser place. All right, so I'm going to clean this up, clean that up obviously, inspect this, and then I decided to go ahead and do the brakes. I have the pads, already did the driver's side, so I'm going to film the passenger side and show you what to do. It's really easy. You pull like a safety pin out of here, then these bigger pins pull out. Then I use a screwdriver to expand the caliper, compress the pistons in here, and then you just pop the new pads in. It's pretty easy, but I'll record it and show you how to do that as well. I decided to go ahead and replace the pads because they're not dangerously thin, but they're pretty thin, and I've already had the pads anyway. So since I'm this far in, just going to go ahead and throw those in. And the rotors look really good. They're still plenty thick and smooth. So in the near future, probably in the next year or so, I'll rebuild this whole front end, and at that point I'll go ahead and replace the rotors since I have them, and I'll go ahead and replace with new pads when that time comes, because pads are pretty cheap. But I'll rebuild all these seals and everything, and then you don't have to worry about it leaking, at least for a couple years. But this side's leaking pretty bad, so I want to deal with that for sure. All right, well, that soaks. It's going to give me a minute to talk a little bit about something to warn you about if you get one of these. What I see here on this passenger side is actually pretty normal. I mentioned earlier that these seals leak a ton when they start getting old. And so two warnings here. One is, don't just check one side, because if I had just checked the driver's side, I would have said, oh, this thing's great, doesn't need a rebuild. But when I look over here at the passenger side, this one definitely has been leaking a ton. So one of two things is happening here. Either this side is just worse than the driver's side, and it's really leaking, or what I suspect happened is at some point a previous owner pressure washed under here and cleaned, and maybe cleaned the driver's side. I know that he had done a little work, you know, painting the frame and cleaning it up. There's overspray everywhere from where he's painted stuff, and so my suspicion is that he cleaned this side really well and didn't make it to this side. And so if you buy one of these things, that's obviously something to look for as you're potentially buying an FJ40. Just kind of check the condition of the front axle. It's not a huge deal if you got one like this that needs to be rebuilt. Like I said, it's common from the leak, but you could make the mistake of thinking that the axle is in really good shape and all the seals are solid, but what's really happened is someone's just pressure washed it and cleaned it. And so you also have to be concerned if they have pressure washed it and cleaned it, but it's leaked all of the grease out, and then you drive it for 2 years thinking, oh, it doesn't leak, everything's fine, but there's no grease in there. That's why it's not leaking. You could mess up your axles. So your joints in there, the burr field. So anyways, I sprayed it down with gunk. Actually, I'm going to borrow my next door neighbor's pressure washer because I know he has one, and I'm going to pressure wash this. Since I'm in here, go ahead and clean it like I said. The driver's side, I may go ahead and spray that one down too. It's really not bad at all. And but just since I've got the pressure washer out, I may go ahead and just hit that one too. But now I know I can't wait a year or so before I rebuild this front end. It's definitely going to need a rebuild probably this summer. And I'm, from the look of how much grease is on this external joint here, I'm probably going to have to add some grease to that knuckle in there. So let me get the pressure washer and hit these things, then we'll move to the brakes. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is clean this up really good. And I like to take some cardboard, like a pizza box or something, and set it underneath just to catch all this black, nasty grease and brake dust that comes off when you spray this stuff. So just start by, cleaning this stuff up best you can. Get some of this nasty brake dust and grease off. It'll be easier to work with if you do that. Probably should put on some gloves. But hey, how else can you show off your gearhead if you don't have grease under your fingernails? Okay, so I cleaned up in here really good with a brush and some gunk, engine degreaser, and a pressure washer. And I got most of the grease off. I mean, it's still, there's some spots and some corners I could clean out, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. When I rebuild this front end, you know, everything will be cleaned and look like brand new. But I got most of the grease off. And what I suspect, I took the little 13-inch wrench, pulled out this top plug, and the combination of both of these plugs coming out super easy with no problem at all. And the fact that they have good fresh grease in it makes me think that the previous owner not only replaced all the fluids in the diffs, transmission, transfer case, but also had these filled up as well. Because the first thing I did when I bought this is I checked all those fluids, and they were all not only topped off, they were super fresh and clean. So that's good. Looks like the guy who owned this, one of the previous owners, took pretty good care of it. And so my guess is these are fresh with grease because they did that probably all at the same time. It's still going to need to be rebuilt because of the amount of grease that was on this one. This one obviously is leaking more than the other one. It was all over the tire as well, which once I got the pressure washer out, I used the pressure washer to just hit that tire, get in all the little cracks and everything. So what I can do now, the advantage to cleaning this is now I can really watch, and over the next several months, once a week or so, I'll just peek under here and see, is it this outer seal that's leaking? Is it the inner seal inside here? I think it's everything, but the advantage of having it cleaned up is you can just kind of keep a better eye and know what's happening. But initially I thought, after just looking at the driver's side, that this was going to be good for another year or so. But now I'm thinking probably need to go ahead and rebuild these sooner than later. But I do want to show you how to do these brakes, these front brakes, while I'm in here. And so let's get to that.